Organizational inclusion is easy to mandate on paper. You draft a broad policy, sign it, and distribute it. But look at a living, breathing sports complex. Thousands of moving parts, diverse needs, intersecting activities. Quantifying actual inclusion in this environment is incredibly difficult. If you rely on qualitative goals, you inevitably get uneven compliance. Audits become subjective. One facility's definition of accessible looks completely different from another's, and the baseline standard fractures. This is the operational problem the IGM Sport 001 framework solves. It removes the subjectivity entirely, giving abstract goals a concrete physical baseline. To be clear, this framework does not invent a bespoke set of sports rules. It does not replace your governing federation's regulations, and it does not alter athlete classification. Instead, it functions as an application layer. It takes unified, global human rights standards and binds them directly to specific, built sporting environments. Today, we are going to deconstruct the architecture of the IGM Sport 001 framework from the ground up. We will examine the three mechanisms that drive it: rigid scope definitions, universally applied core criteria, and mathematically weighted provider matrices. True institutional inclusion must be treated as a measurable operational mandate. Intentions are no longer enough. The foundation of the IGM assessment is the documented scope. You are evaluated strictly on predefined physical, programmatic, and digital boundaries. This scope isolates exactly what is audited: specific physical locations, digital platforms, and partner services. Anything outside your authority is explicitly excluded. Within those defined boundaries, there is a strict limitation. You cannot cross-compensate between different delivery modalities. This is enforced by the Physical, Digital, and Events Accessibility Rule. The rule dictates that digital accessibility cannot substitute for physical exclusion. A highly compliant registration app does not buy you physical leniency on the ground. If a physical facility is claimed within your documented scope, it must meet physical accessibility standards. Rigidly defining the scope up front eliminates compliance loopholes. It forces an organization to be fully accountable for every specific environment it claims to manage. Once the documented scope is locked in, the framework introduces its internal support structures. These are the 8 core criteria, categorized as ITE 01 through ITE 08. These 8 pillars apply universally to all providers within their scope. Because broad pillars are too abstract, they translate into 40 specific sport subcriteria. Look at the first pillar, ITE 01, Rights, Equality, and Dignity. It splits into 4 distinct auditable struts. Under ITE 01, the abstract right to participate becomes a strict operational mandate, where every claim of equality must be backed by institutional proof. Assessors look for specific evidence: documented anti-discrimination policies, transparent selection criteria, and rigorous safeguarding protocols that protect athletes from harm. This structure forces an organization to convert high-minded human rights principles into distinct, auditable data points. This creates a logistical problem. How can a single framework use the exact same 40 criteria to fairly assess an online esports league and a physical community rugby club? This data matrix solves the issue. It maps the 40 subcriteria on the y-axis against provider-type weighting matrices on the x-axis. Instead of altering the foundational standards, the matrices mathematically shift the scoring burden based on the provider's operational environment. For a digital provider, physical environment criteria are marked not applicable, but they don't get a free pass. The weight of those physical criteria dynamically shifts, expanding to heavily emphasize digital continuity, data privacy, and the responsible use of AI. This dynamic calibration ensures that the rigor of the audit remains completely static, even when the operational environment changes. With the criteria calibrated, the data must be processed and verified by human operators. The IGM framework uses a 12-stage recognition pathway built on strict operational separation. At Node 7, a certified assessor reviews evidence, grading reliability and assigning performance levels, but their authority stops there. Assessors are structurally forbidden from granting a final star classification. They cannot even communicate a potential outcome to the provider during the audit. That data must pass to Node 10, where a technical reviewer audits the assessor's work. Finally, the data reaches Node 11, where an independent counsel makes the final determination. This algorithmic separation of powers ensures the final rating is mathematically sound, locking out any subjective inflation or internal conflicts of interest. The verified data feeds through the weighted matrix and outputs a final, unalterable score between 0 and 100. A score in the top tier, 90 to 100, generates the final recognition asset, the 5-star Include Global mark. Achieving this rating does not bypass standard federation rules, athlete classifications, or legal safeguarding requirements. What the mark guarantees is a specialized, verified certification. It proves an environment has the structural capacity to deliver operational dignity and true access. True institutional inclusion requires moving past generalized policies. It demands rigorous, scope-bound, and functionally isolated auditing.